think it was 15 months. Might have been 16. I don't know. It was a long time ago. Lisa and I was in the hospital, or I was in the hospital and Lisa was there in St. Bernard's. Doctor came in after some tests and he said, I've got some bad news. And I said, okay. He said, you've got cholangiolar carcinoma. I said, really? I said, what is that? He said, well, it's a non-curable biliary duct cancer. You've got from 6 to 12 months to live. You know, I looked at Lisa. We had peace. We wasn't boo-hooing, and there was peace. And so they chemoed me, and we radiated and done all that stuff. And then they come up with the idea that I needed a liver, that liver would save me, save my life for a while. They said the type of cancer that you have, it will probably come back even with a liver, but this will buy you a few years maybe. So after 2 or 3 bouts of sepsis and chemo, and right now I'm about 185. I got down to 160. And the chemo like to got me. So they got me in. They called. It was wonderful. They called. They said, we have a liver. Be down here as quick as you can get here. So we went to Memphis. And they prepared me. They made the incision. I've got a beautiful half-moon scar here. And they got in there and they found some cancer that had jumped from the biliary duct into my abdomen. So they sewed me back up and they said, we can't do the transplant because the medicine, the anti-rejection medicine, will kill you in 3 weeks. I said, we'll do something else. Well, I went into remission. And I think I went into remission because of prayer. I believe that 100%. And so I ask you to continue praying because just the other day we got some more news. We had to go in, every 30 days I had to go in and do a PET scan. And they came back and said, you've got 6 to 12 months to live. And I said, we beat it once and we'll beat it again. And I believe that. So I'd like to read something to you. This is significant, and it's one that you have heard all your lives. The Lord is my shepherd. I have all I need. He lets me rest in green meadows. He leads me beside peaceful waters. He guides me along the right paths, bringing honor to his name. Now listen to this. Even when I walk through the darkest valley, I'll not be afraid. For you are close beside me. Your rod and your staff protect me and comfort me. That's important from what I'm going to talk today. You prepare a feast for me in the presence of my enemies. You honor me by anointing my head with oil, and my cup overflows with blessings. Surely goodness and unfailing love will pursue me all the days of my life, and I will live in the house of the Lord forever. That's important. That is important. Because that's one of the things I want to talk to you today, because something happened to me in 1987. But before we get there, I want to tell you a couple of instances. And I've got a whole list. I've probably got 5 or 6 different things here to tell you. But because of time, I'll condense those. When I was born right here in 1954 in Kennett, Missouri. And I was a premature baby now. In 1954, I was a late 7-month or early 8-month term. Now, back in 1954, when you was a preemie, your chances of survival was not near as good as they are today. But God, right? But that is just the start of it, because on the way home, I think Dad had a 1952 Chevrolet, had the steel dash and not any of the comforts that we have today in automobiles, but he had a bad wreck. I ended up hitting the dash and then the floorboard. But God. Okay? Then when I was 15, something happened that changed my life forever. In July, my mother was diagnosed with leukemia. You remember it, Ron? A lot of y'all might not know this. Ron's my cousin. I get all of what I know from him. Even my hair. So, in November of the same year, Mom passed and went to paradise. That changed me. I was angry. I can't describe how angry I was, but it was bad. Had a chip on my shoulder. Nothing satisfied me. I was so angry that a year later I tried and almost succeeded, committing suicide. We had a 500 count aspirin bottle. And I don't even think it had been opened. And I opened that sucker and I started taking them and drinking water. Took all but about that much. And I thought, you know what? My parents deserve to clean up this mess. I'm not going to be here, so they'll have to do it. I strode them aspirins all over the kitchen. Well, that day also marked a day that one of my friends, his name was Mackie Donner, was getting married in Rector. So I was asked to play the organ, and I played for the wedding. My best friend, Rick Staples, took me there, and we hung out a lot. He had a Pontiac hot rod, and I told him what I'd done, and I was getting a little woozy, and he took me home. When I walked in, my dad started in on me. You're not this, you are, it was crazy. I didn't argue with him. I don't think he believed that I would do that until I laid on the floor and was almost unconscious. And he took me to the emergency room, and it'd been long enough that they couldn't pump my stomach. So they gave me IVs. And I remember them telling Dad, we can't pump his stomach. All we can do is give him some IVs and with some potassium and different chemicals in there and hope that it works. But God, it worked. Now, here's the scary one. When I was 17, my job was to work for Morse Farm Centers and to take care of the farms, the cattle and hogs, and the fences, and bush hog, the hill ground. And we had some hill ground. How many of you know what a 400 farm all looks like? Okay, just a few, so I'm going to tell you. They were under 2-row cotton pickers. They turned them around, put the big wheels in front and the tire in the back, and then they set the 2-row cotton picker on top of it, and that was the power. So this had a great big balloon tire on it because it'd been under a cotton picker on the front. And I mean huge. And so I was lickety-splitting over those hills. My Uncle Irvin had bought a farm just next to Piggott. I'd never seen the farm, but it was Friday. I had a date, and I needed to get done. And so I pull in pretty fast gear, probably third, bush hogging. Now, how many of you knows what a PTO is? Okay. That is a shaft that extends out the rear of a tractor just above the hitch. And it's splined. And one can hook up the implements like a bush hog, and it powers it. It turns the blades. And the more RPMs that you have, the faster that the blades turn. It also has a shield over it. The shield is about 6 inches wide, and it covers the PTO shaft and then has the sides. And that's to keep someone from reaching in there while it's going and getting their arm caught and twisting them all up and getting them. So I come across this hill, and I saw down at the bottom in the valley some brush, but I didn't think anything, just zipped through it. Well, it was a washout, and I hit that thing about as fast as you can hit it. Those tractors had steel spring seats, and when I hit that, it catapulted me out like a shotgun. I still had a hold of the steering wheel of that tractor, but I landed behind the seat on top of that shield. 1 inch either way or back, and then they would have never found all of me. But God. And as I look back about all of that, I never realized until recently that God was protecting me. Now, see, when I was 8 years old, I got saved in an old General Baptist revival at Gravel Hill, just out of St. Francis. And it was a salvation that it kept me believing in God. It was a state of being that I realized that God had saved me and that no one could ever take that from me. As I look back, and there's some more that I could tell you, but we're running out of time. It all is proof and was pointing to what I'm about to tell you my favorite subject is now, and that's heaven. We got a picture of this, and we couldn't find it. I was hoping to get it and put it up here. You couldn't even recognize me. I looked like the Elephant Man. I had an abscessed tooth that had swelled and turned into cellulitis. I couldn't even hardly breathe. And so the dentist, he had me at his office. He was that concerned. And he was calling around trying to find surgeons to do the surgery. Well, guess what? They was all in Arizona at a big convention. He found one surgeon in St. Louis, Missouri that agreed to hop in his plane and fly down to Cape Girardeau and do the surgery. Now, I remember going in because I grabbed the ER doctor's tablet. A lot of people don't know this. I went to nursing school. Mistake. But I grabbed the tablet and ink pen. I said, 50 milligrams Demerol stat. He looked at me. That's about the last thing I remember, except I realized one day, or I realized during this, that I was in a surrounding that I didn't recognize, but there was a familiar voice, and it was my mother. And she loved me, and she told me that. She'd been watching. She told me that. But there's this light. And this light, there is anything that I tell you about heaven falls short of what I really saw, because there's no words in the English language. I can get close, but the words in there to describe what I saw. But there's this light. It was pure white, vivid. And then it was blue. It wasn't changing colors, but there was no boundaries separating them. And something that I didn't understand. But I saw it. And we were talking. I said, Mom, can I go in? She said, no, because you've got something yet to do. Well, she didn't tell me what it was. I didn't know. And for these years, from 1987 to now, I often wondered if I'd done it yet. But I think one would know if you was doing what God had for you to do. And I think it's this. I think it's to tell this story. If anything else comes up, I'll let you know. But there's something else that happened that day too. I realized heaven was a real place. It is a place that has light. And by the way, Revelations 21:11, if you read that when you get home, and Revelations 21:23 says that heaven needs no light because God is the light and Jesus is the lamp. I believe that day I saw God's light. I believe that 100%. And I remember that realizing that heaven was not only a place, it was a state of being, just like I was saved. It's a state of being. Because I realized as I was there, and since then, that I felt, not did I just see, but I felt peace. More peace than one could ever imagine. I felt confidence. More than, again, there's just not the words to describe what I experienced in those feelings. Joy. Hope. All of those emotions were there. It's beautiful. There was a Sunday school teacher trying to, and I remember coming back over and hovering over my body in the surgery. And I remembered how painful it was to go back into the body. It was a jolt. And I didn't like it. I wanted to stay. But if I'd done that, we wouldn't be here today, would we? There was a Sunday school teacher trying to determine if she had gotten through to her kids or not about heaven. And she said, if I sold everything that I had, all of my furniture, my house, my car, my home, and gave it all to church, would that get me into heaven? And the kids said, no. She was proud. She realized that they kind of had it going on. She said, well, how do we get in then? And those kids looked at one another, confused. And one of them finally stood up, little boy, and he said, well, you got to die. And that's the truth. That's the truth. You know, we're all going to die. Even me, I'm going to die. But I'll tell you this. If we put our hope and our faith in Jesus Christ and we accept His ways, then we'll have an eternal home, one that I've got a glimpse of. And guess what? That home can never be blown away by a tornado. It can never be destroyed by fire or wind. It can never be foreclosed on, Julie. If y'all don't know, that's Julie. She's a banker. It's just a place that I want to be in eventually. And I'll get to see my friends and my family, and I hope I get to see y'all there too. And that's my story, and I'm glad you gave me the chance to tell it to you. So, if I don't see you again, I'll see you in heaven.